Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Twitter space today with our colleagues from the Scroll Engineering team and also colleagues from the Automata team. Justin Drake, welcome in. Everybody, please sit in. We are going to start shortly. Alrighty, so we're ready. We're set up. I think we have all our speakers online. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Um, To kickstart this amazing Twitter space, I'm going to intro my fellow colleague, Mohammed, from our research team at Scroll to lead the way in this Twitter space. Please, Mohammed, take it away.
Thanks, Juan. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today, we're going to talk about our recent announcement about using multi-prover for a scroll. As Juan already said, we have many people of our team, Dr. Sandy, Haichen, me, and also very special guests from Ethereum Foundation, Justin Drake, and from our dear collaborators, Automata, Deli, and Chua. So we have a lot to unpack today. Without further ado, I start introducing Scroll and Automata very quickly for you guys. So Scroll is a EVM compatible ZK rollup. I guess that's enough for us. Automata is a privacy focused, multi-product service company. And they have a range of different products that are focused on basically integrating privacy enhancing technologies and cryptography into multiple levels of Web3. Yeah, I guess you guys can hear more from Deli and Chua, and I encourage them to unmute themselves and.
Hi, yeah. Thanks, Mohammed. Hi, everyone. This is Deli. I'm the co-founder of Automata. So we're actually building a modular attestation layer that will be extended to that will extend machine level trust to Ethereum and other ecosystems. So essentially, we're introducing a new concept, proof of machinehood, where billions of devices and machines can be fully attested on L1, L2. So actually, the collaboration with Scroll is part of this because we are using trusted hardwares to achieve some of the additional functionalities. In this case, it's actually another prover to make sure that the existing proving system is sound. So yeah, thanks for having us. Glad to work with you guys actually.
Perfect, thank you. So today's agenda is mostly around unpacking what is multi-prover rollup design, why it's interesting or necessary, and later on talk about a little bit about the detail of implementation, what are the complexities around implementing a SGX prover and so on. So let's start with the basic, and this is a question for Haichen. What is a multi-rollup, and what's the motivation to building such a thing?
I think Haichen got disconnected for some reason. He's back. Haichen, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear now. But sorry, I lost the question.
Mo
I can
asked you to. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Mo, go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to start the discussion with you defining for us what's a multi-prover rollup and why we want to build such a thing.
Yeah, so I think before we jump into the multi-prover rollup, we probably first talk about the current rollups, which are all single prover rollup. So what does like a single prover rollup means? Like it only rely on one mechanism to validate all of the transaction happens on the layer two. For example, there are two main category now. One is the optimistic rollup, and the second the ZK rollup. So the optimistic rollup relies on using the fraud proof, so that if anything like wrong happens after the sequencer that upload a batch of transaction data and then the state transition, but something like some people like disagree with the state transition, they can use the fraud proof to challenge what sequencer send up to the Ethereum so that it can challenge the state transition, because they think like after applying the same set of transactions, they end up with a different state root. And then another way like is the ZK ROP relies on the zero-knowledge proof protocols to actively generate proof by going to validate all of the state transitions happens on the layer 2s. Now, like the both of the single proof single prover rollup, they just rely on single mechanisms. So one like example on the ZK rollup. So one concern is that the ZK rollup, especially for the ZK EVM, it's a very complex software that it could be like it could be not bug free for a very long time. And then so previously Vitalik pointed out like that it could be a concern that if there's not it's a bug, and then since like it's a very centralized way, like the people are relying on the ZK EVM to validate all of the layer 2 transactions, it could be like a concern, like people can exploit the bugs inside the ZK EVM to assert any invalid transactions or invalid state transitions to the layer 2 to still use the funds. So the multi-prover motivation is mainly like that. If we can add an additional prover or proof alongside of the existing proofs, so that we can now, if both of the proofs or more than like one proofs agree on the same set of the state transaction after applying the same set of the transactions, then it gives us stronger guarantee and a more security guarantee to the layer 2 users that these transactions and the state transition is valid after applying the same set of the transactions. So more like to be more precise, like that multi-prover rollup is that it relies on more than one mechanisms or more than one proof systems to validate the state transition happens on the layer 2.
Perfect. Yeah, that brings a natural follow-up question: what happens when these, multiple proof systems that we have in place disagree, and whether that's imposes a new risk or trade-off on our system or not? And I want to ask Justin to go ahead and pitch in about that.
Sure. I guess it depends on how it's configured, right? Because it's a bit like a multisig, a K of n multisig. You have the n different verifiers, and then you require K of them in order to move forward. So one possible configuration, for example, if you have two verifiers, would be a 2 of 2. And so in some sense, you're gaining on safety, right? Because there needs to be a bug in both of the verifiers to cause an invalid state transition on the L2, but you're losing on liveness because like the two verifiers could disagree. I guess one of the nice things about having SGX as one of the verifiers is that it's fairly unlikely that the SGX itself, a verifier, has a bug, and the reason is that you're, broadly speaking, what I expect will happen is that you're compiling an existing client like Geth or some other client into SGX, and so it's not like you're rewriting from scratch using very fancy technology and circuits. So if there's going to be a bug, I think it's more likely to happen on the snark verifier, and so you're not really losing that much liveness by introducing a second verifier which is SGX based.
Makes sense. Basically, we gain a lot of security without compromising a lot, hopefully, of liveness.
Right.
Yeah. So let's be a little bit more specific about how Scroll is approaching multi-prover. Can you tell us, what was the thought process about the way Scroll approach this Haichen, and just a little bit about how you think about this problem and how is Scroll is going to do this.
Haichen has disconnected again, so I'll take over, I think, for now.
Perfect.
So I think then first of all, I would like to credit Justin for the idea of using a tease for a multi-prover setup. I think it was December 2022 when Justin authored the ETH research article on it, and I think we started looking into how to implement it and whether the trade-offs are worth it almost immediately. And in our configuration, we essentially use two provers because there are multiple ways you can do it. And both of them have to assert that the same state root has been produced by the same batch. And actually, Justin mentioned that you gain safety, but you lose some liveness temporarily if, let's say, two of the provers disagree. But actually, I spent some time thinking about it recently, and I think it's possible to still have liveness, but just not finalize the blocks or the batches. So how it would work is essentially you would pause the cross-chain communication, but you would still have the sequencers producing the batches. And so you can still continue posting the batches on chain, but just not finalize them until the Security Council or the governance picks the correct setup. And so if that's the case, then you essentially make no trade-offs at the benefit of having a significantly higher safety guarantees, because in this case, you have to have both of the proof systems fail in order for your funds to be stolen or an illegal state transition be proposed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Basically, we could still keep sequencing without finalizing, but yeah.
Yes, you can proceed with publish. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, a natural follow-up question is whether we fall too far behind from finalization, and whether we create a huge backlog or not.
But the thing is, you still can finalize off chain because you can, if you're on a full node, you don't actually need the state root to be finalized on chain. You can still finalize things off chain. Obviously, for cross chain communication, you would need on chain finality, but you sort of guarantee at least partial liveness, which means that you can still say publish Oracle updates, etc., and certain mission critical tasks can still proceed without you risking the funds that have been locked in the bridge.
Makes sense. Haichen, I think you're back. Do you want to pitch in a little bit about how Scroll is approaching multi-prover, what are our criteria, and so on?
Yes, yeah. Sorry about like the buggy things. So yeah, so there are three, I think, objectives we want to achieve when we're designing the multi-proof system on the for Scroll. First is that the multi-proof system should be enhance our security. That means it should be more secure than a single proof with the ZK EVM. And the second, we don't want to trade off on the finality time, because one of the advantage of the ZK proof is that it can have very short finality time, like within an hour, compared to maybe other proof system could be like takes days to finalize all the transactions on the SIMs. And then the third one is that we only want to introduce marginal cost to the layer 2 transactions. We don't want to say, okay, we want to definitely want to make all the transaction on Scroll be more secure, but we don't want to make it be much more expensive. So that's are the three criteria objectives we want to achieve. So we go look at like different designs on those multi-proof systems. So first of all, because we want to have better security for layer 2s, that means I think we agree that we should have always on multi-proof systems. That means all of the state transition should be verified by at least like one like ZK proof, and then with additional proof systems. But now, like because of these, the other two requirements we have is that the short finality time and the cost efficiency requirement. So that actually narrows our options for adding a secondary provers we want to have. So we then explore some options for picking up a second prover inside our multi-proof system on Scroll. So previously, so first of all, like we consider fraud proof, but fraud proof has a problem that it's a drawback of the fraud proof is that it requires a 7 days challenge window to finalize any transactions. So if you're combining the fraud proofs with the ZK proofs, actually the finality time now becomes the longest finality time of the either proof. So that means like the finality time will increase from within an hour to 7 days. So it's not what we want. And another option is like we want to see like if we can build a ZK event, another ZK event prover. I think like there'll be some long-term goal we can still pursue, but still like take much more effort and a time to build a second ZK event proof, and then probably the proof verification will cost more. So that's like why we turned on to the third options is to choosing this TEE prover, which stand for the Trust Execution Environment Prover. So this is like, I think, as Togru mentioned, that Justin proposed this like a very long time ago. So the TE is basically allows you to run software in a secure area of a processor that the data and memory is inaccessible to other components in the system. That means like it build like a very secure enclave inside a system that no others can access the data inside that. Then you can keep some secret, for example, the secret key there that only the enclave can have access to. Then inside this secure area, you can then run a state validation software to validate all of the state transitions on the layer 2, and then eventually signed by the secret key that only is available inside this secure enclave that going to validate the transaction there. So now, like one of the benefits of the running the TE is that it's very flexible. You can very easily run software inside this secure enclave, and then the additional cost for verifying the TE proof is marginal because you need to only verify the signature is correct. And then also, it doesn't increase the finality time because it's very fast to run the software to validate the state transitions on the of the layer 2s. So that satisfies all of our objectives. So that's why we choose to we'll combine this TE prover with the ZK event prover to secure the scroll transactions.
Haichen, I have a bit of a question for you, actually. Would it be fair to say that the scroll sequencer acts like a third verifier, some sort of centralized trusted verifier? Because in order for blocks to go on chain, they have to be signed off by the sequencer. And so even if the SGX and the SNOC are kind of broken, so long as the sequencer hasn't been taken over, only valid blocks will make it on chain anyway.
I think like in some sense you can treat it as a third way like to validate the transactions. But I would say like I think the sequencer, because since it's centralized, it has a lot of control over what transaction to include and what state transaction there. So I think like it can increase a little bit on that, but I would say like it's better to have other proofs mechanism to validate the transactions. So it more like so someone propose something and then others will be validators to validate whether your proposal of that transaction and then the state from old root to new root is correct or not.
I think it's a good segue to actually discuss the side effect of having multi-provers is the fact that we can more confidently decentralize the protocol now and the prover network to be specific, because like one of my worries previously was that, let's say like for now, because we control the provers and basically the provers, as long as we're honest, the provers are only going to publish the validity proofs that don't have any exploits inside, so don't like maliciously modify the state or something like that. That was one of my worries when we decentralize. So what happens if there's a bug that we haven't figured it out before and now people can actually exploit it? Because now like we act as a barrier, protection barrier in between the prover computation and the prover verification on chain. And so multi-prover is a good way to actually allow us to decentralize without worrying about that side effect. Because now, let's say if there's a bug in one prover, you would have to figure out how to exploit the second prover in the same way to actually steal funds or like make an invalid state transition. And so I think it's a great side effect to have from the fact that we introduced multi-provers. Would you agree with that, Haichen?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I think this is one of the motivation that motivates us that to build the second prover, so that make it easier for us to, because our eventual goal is to make Scroll decentralized. So this is one like step towards our goal to making our prover to be decentralized first.
Would it be fair to say that the SGX prover can also like provide very low latency proving? And so if you want to build a bridge, some sort of like SGX based bridge, which is very low latency, which is faster than the 1 hour settlement that comes with SNOC proving, you could do that if you wanted to.
You mean you only rely on the SGX prover?
Yeah. So if you wanted to build a bridge for, let's say, low value payment amount or something like that, then you could.
Yeah. I guess like you could do that. I think there's some like the argument or like controversy of like relying on the SGX or NAT technology is that you basically putting the trust onto the Intel SGX because onto the Intel, because Intel controls some master key there. But I feel like for some low value things, it's possible that I can rely on only SGX proof alone. But like if you have more assets, I would say like if it's better to having more than one, like more than the SGX prover alone. So it'll be like giving you more secure sense. And previously also like I think in the blog post we talk about this downside of those TE implementations and how one manufacturer, because you're putting trust to that. So it'll be great if we can combine multiple TE provers from different hardware vendors and a different like kind implementation to have a bit like more diversity there, so it could be giving stronger guarantee than just trusting on a single hardware vendor.
Yeah, I actually totally agree with Haichen. So I guess the idea of having multiple prover is actually to have diversity within the kind of like your entire protocol community. So far in as like let's say because Ts are not restricted to just Intel SGX. This specific implementation that we have now, presently at the moment, is actually based on Intel SGX. But there are actually other vendors that are that produces Ts. For example, ARM have their CCA, confidential compute architecture. AMD has their AMD SCV. AWS, Amazon has their Nitro Enclave. And then I think even some of the Chinese cloud providers have their own version of TEs. There are also open source TE projects like Keystone. So the thing is, when we talk about TE, we need to know that TE itself is actually a very diverse kind of like group. So some people might not trust Intel, some people might not trust AMD, but the thing is we can all, if we are able to form this kind of like TE council, and then if we actually design our solution, our protocol to be one that actually relies on the integrity of, as in relies on at least on just one single honest party, then having all these multiple kind of like provers, multiple TE provers, multiple ZK provers will actually make the entire system more robust. So yes, I mean, just like how Ethereum actually looks at having multiple, having this client diversity, right, to kind of like improve the robustness of the protocol itself. So if there's a particular kind of like implementation bug in one of the clients, the other clients can actually, you need to actually have the same bug in multiple implementation, client implementations, which itself is actually a very unlikely event. So yeah.
I guess I have a bit of a question for Haichen and Justin about the long-term future of multi-provers. Do you think SGX is just a stepping stone, or TEs in general are just a stepping stone towards an environment that has multiple validity proofs, different validity proofs acting as multi-provers, or do you think TEs and SGX specifically is here to stay as like one of the multi-provers?
I would say it's temporary for a couple of reasons. Like, one is that there is a mimetic downside to using SGX at all. Even if you try and educate people, just the mere existence of TEs can come with a mimetic downside. And then the other thing is that if Intel were to be compromised, then it can lead to a liveness failure. So if someone within Intel has access to the keys, they can just cause, and we have permissionless sequencing and permissionless proving, then the attacker can just submit an invalid, an invalid block and give a valid SGX proof. And so one of my theses is that eventually we're going to have rollups without governance, right? It's going to be fully immutable code. And at that point, even governance can't fix things. And so we're not going to want to rely on Intel for liveness there.
Yeah, I agree with Justin, like, because the liveness concern is definitely like a trade-off for relying on the SGX. So currently we need to design certain, like using the governance or a security console as the way like to step in if to approve disagree, so to keep the liveness and to decide what are the correct state transition there. So I think eventually if we have multiple different ZK EVMs implementations or other proof systems, like it would be better to run like more trustlessly.
And Justin, since you mentioned the mimetic, Chua, did you want to say something?
Yes. I would actually like to kind of like extend the argument a little bit. So if we just talk about, let's say if we have like two provers, or for TEs, we would just rely solely on Intel, then I actually agree with what Justin and Haichen is saying. But like I kind of like described previously, right? There are actually multiple vendors for Intel. For TEs, Intel being one of them. And once we actually increase the kind of like the diversity of the provers that are involved in this multi-proof system, we actually, I mean, if we want a highly robust solution, we might have a N of N agreement. But the thing is, we can always have a, say, 2/3 majority consensus to have it be finalized. That means, let's say if we have 3 different verifiers, 2 of them would have to agree before it is finalized. So in this case, let's say a hypothetical situation where we have a AMD TE and Intel TE and the ZK the ZK proof system screws ZK proof rollup. So in this case, even if, let's say, Intel's key gets compromised, right? We still have a way for us to have liveness, because AMD's so-called AMD keys are fine. Their machines are not compromised, and then the ZK proof itself is fine also. So in that way, I would actually argue for a more diverse kind of environment. And the other point that I want to kind of like share a little bit also is that when we look at diversity or like multiple kind of like multi-factor proving, you would want to have a kind of like you want to have a different method of actually performing this proof. So for example, like when we have multi-factor authentication, we typically would want to have like something that we own, something that we know, and something that we are. They have different properties. So let's say if we want to have a multi-prover system, it'll actually form a more robust base if there are multiple approaches to actually perform this verification and this proof. So, for example, we have validity proof in the form of ZK proof, and then we have actually a re-execution proof in the form of TE, and then we might actually also have some form of like a consensus proof, maybe. Like this is just something that I'm thinking about.
I mean, I guess if let's say one of the vendors goes offline, and the governance can switch, like rotate that specific vendor to another vendor, then it's fine. But if you're thinking about the end game, right, where there's no governance whatsoever, then really the only verifier that requires no maintenance at all is going to be pure code, and that's going to be a SNOC-based verifier. But I agree, this is quite a distant future where we have rollups without governance. And in the medium term, what you suggest, the K of N, multi-vendor TEs makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that the rollups without governance are quite a long way away. So I think it's fair to assume that for at least the foreseeable future, TEs are fine because we can just use governance or security councils to switch around in case they fail, like one of the implementations fail. Going back to what I was starting to talk about before, Justin, you mentioned the mimetic factor in TEs, and I remember when you first published the article about using SGX, there were a lot of replies in there saying of people saying that, oh, it's SGX, it's broken, whatever. And like, how do you think we as a community should approach educating people that actually like certain use cases, the security of SGX or TEs in general is additive, so you don't depend on their security. They're just there to increase your security.
Right. I mean, I guess one way is to just show by example, and I think the multi-verifier, is a great example. Another really great and simple example is staking. So if you're an operator of validators, the signing key needs to be a hotkey that's connected to the internet. But if you put that hotkey within SGX, then now you have an additional layer of protection, even if your computer has a virus or gets hacked. And one of the things that I'm hoping will happen, relatively soon, is that it's very, very easy for any operator, including solo operators, to protect themselves with SGX. I think a lot of the professional operators are already doing that, right? They have signing keys within enclaves, but it's not really a technology that's super accessible to solo operators. I believe that Puffer has written basically this anti-slasher SGX-based protection, and they've open sourced it. And I believe someone from the community wrote like a really detailed tutorial explaining how to set it up. But yeah, it's still a little bit complicated. There's a few steps to go through, and so maybe what needs to happen is someone provides a packaged solution with that just works at the press of a button, and you get the same protections as Coinbase would, which I'm pretty sure they use TEs.
So essentially, you see the future of staking, where the majority of the stakers use TEs, some form of TEs to protect the hotkeys, the signing keys.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, maybe an even simpler example to understand is hardware wallets, right? Like, sure, you have the freedom to not use a hardware wallet and just use MetaMask and have your private keys on your computer, but it is just a strict improvement to have some sort of separate device which is connected to the computer, which could be compromised.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think yeah, we just need to put more effort into helping people understand that there are certain use cases where SGX or TEs in general actually are beneficial to your security and not something that you should worry about or something that can basically result in you losing your funds easier than what would have happened without it. Sandy, you have been quite silent this entire Twitter Spaces. So, do you want to chime in? You're the, I would like to say you're the business head at school. So, what is your perception, and why do you think that multi-provers are an exciting path from your perspective?
Gosh, thank you for that. Thank you for that plug, Toggle, and for picking on me. Love it. So I think I want to kind of, give a very big shout out to, as Justin mentioned, like all the contributions from external parties that made this possible. This is really kind of, it takes a village to build the next level of security standards for rollups. And from my perspective, I think anything that increases the security of the rollup makes me sleep a little bit better. And I think, running a rollup has really changed my perspective on how much like responsibility it is, both kind of mainly to mainly to everybody that is bridge to scroll and who is building on scroll and who is trusting us with their time and their resources and participating in this essentially open source experiment to to build a global coordination layer and be the kind of the transaction, be the transactional layer for to scaling Ethereum, and that's super exciting. I think from my perspective, like the implementation of multi-prover really gives me the confidence to kind of go to market a little bit harder and to onboard more builders and be more confident and just kind of in our point of interaction with LPs and people who are thinking about, oh, how do I deploy? I think this gives them and hopefully gives us that extra layer of confidence about so-called like funds are safe, but in a mathematical and engineering geared way. So I'm super excited for this, and I think the great thing about multi-provers, it's I think it was Justin like a year ago and kind of said this is kind of like adding a 2FA. You wouldn't like necessarily think about how important it is until like your Twitter or your account gets hacked. But now almost everybody, I would most people would recommend 2FA unilaterally to any kind of messaging or login system because it's just like inevitable that the security standards need to increase as our lives and on the sect like part of our lives that intersect online and on chain starts to increase. So we think this is kind of going to be a very basic set, and we think all the roll-ups will essentially adopt it, and we're very proud to be kind of pioneers in this particular direction.
I think it's a good segue.
I think yeah.
Sorry,
Okay, well, go for it.
sorry. I think it's a good segue to ask our friends at Automata to tell us a little bit about what are the main complexities behind building a SGX prover. Yeah, let's just start with that.
Yeah, actually, I like to see this. I'm trying to like tone down on the complexity actually, because to be honest, in reality, building in TE, building in Intel SGX, for us, it's relatively easy right now because we have some existing building blocks that we have created throughout the years, especially on things like handling Ethereum transactions, Ethereum blocks. Because previously we had some, we also tried create a Ethereum block builder in PBS architecture. So it was able to produce a mainnet block on Ethereum too. So thanks to that project, we actually have some foundations for creating the prover, like additional prover for Scroll as well. So what I did was just basically following Scroll's Ziki VM spec and try to like reproduce, like re-execute the transactions following the same state transition functions, and eventually submitting the result on chain, so that at layer 1 you can just compare the result coming from the Ziki proof and the result coming from our prover as well. I mean, essentially, right now, I agree with what Sandy just said. Is you can treat it as just 2FA. It's additional check that you want to pass before like giving it a green light, because running without it could have other risks as well. So this is kind of our take on this. I would say we have some experience on building this, and happy to also explore other angles of securing, like in general, the rollup or blockchain systems.
Perfect. Can you tell us a little bit about how was your engagement with the Scroll? Like, why do you guys did this, and why you guys did this in open?
Okay. So maybe I'll start off with why we decided to do this in the open. I think like all code wants to be free. That's the kind of like the cliche way of saying why we should do open source. But in a sense, we kind of like we built on shoulders of giants, right? Like for example, the Rust SDK the Intel SGX Rust SDK that we built the T prover on is actually an open source project that's incubated by Apache. So it's called the T-Clave Intel SGX Rust SDK. So the way how we see it is that when we build in the open and then we kind of like review whatever that we have, this would attract contributors, people who are interested in the space to come in, take a look at our code. And this would actually, we feel, improve the quality of the code. And I mean, more ice makes more bugs shallow, right? And this is something that we want to do. And the other thing is that since the code is open source, someone else who is interested to continue building this can just take it, work on it, and then build something even better out of it. Or like take it and then kind of like modify it for some other purpose or for some other rollups, or port it to some other TE vendors like AMD or AWS. And this is why we made it open source. As for the kind of like the engagement between Automata and Scroll, I would really want to thank Scroll for actually giving us the opportunity to work on this with them. So the whole project actually started off as a kind of like a grant given by Scroll to actually explore the feasibility and the feasibility of the idea. Whether does it even make sense for us to do all of this? It sounds good on paper, but like, is the performance of Intel SGX good enough? Can we actually do all the things that we say? Are we able to perform the necessary attestation for the Intel SGX to prove that the T itself is actually secure, to prove the integrity of the enclave itself? What about like complexities of the enclave? Because like what Haichen mentioned, right? The enclave is like an isolated part of your hardware. It actually doesn't have any access to your, say, your network card or your storage. So there's actually this like marshalling of data across all these trust domains. I'll be able to do all of this, and then that's how basically the engagement started. So we are really grateful for the opportunity that Scroll provides, and of course this whole thing, how to play, it is actually a very good example on how like TE technology itself can be used as a way to actually enhance the robustness or the security of a rollup, because Screw is actually a ZK rollup.
Yeah. Also chiming in a little bit, like we are also very glad we're collaborating with Automata, as like Automata is very has very strong expertise in the SGX and TEA implementation wise, and also just looking to the future, which like how the Scroll protocol will interact with Automata SGX provers. We have some preliminary designs, but we're going to drill down on the details of all the protocols, and then there's a lot of things we need to also to make sure that the whole protocol is still secure and then become more secure after adding the TE provers, and also while still keep the liveness there. And the second thing is like we are going to also working with Automata to auditing the code before we really put them into the production, and then to put it into the real like the production to secure all of the scroll state transitions.
Haichen, another question for you. Since we made the announcement yesterday, I got a few people asking me who asked me whether they would be able to permissionlessly run an SGX prover. So I think it would be like good for us to highlight whether it would be possible and what are the hurdles and what are the steps that we have to take in order for it to be possible. Would you like to expand on it a bit?
Yeah, I think like it's totally possible to run the SGX prover permissionlessly, but we're still kind of reviewing the security implication and some of the incentive mechanism to see like whether we're going to do it on day one or will be first like run by a committee and then later be fully permissionless and decentralized. But I think like the first step is definitely won't be like the running as a centralized SGX provers. Will be like the having a committee to run that. But we are kind of like reviewing whether it's possible to just running like fully permissionless on day one. It probably requires some of the because running SGX provers still incur some costs, although it's not too much. But kind of figure out will be any incentive mechanism for people to or incentivized to run the SGX prover, and then whether the security implication for that.
Cool. Justin, in your opinion, is a multi-prover a first step in like this road towards a rollup that doesn't have a multi-sig, that only has a delayed upgradability, or you don't think it can happen without enshrinement?
Right. So what I think for some period of time, what I expect to see is that there's going to be the ability for a multi-sig to press a big red button if there's basically an invalid state transition, which could make it on chain. And what I expect will happen is that there's going to be an artificial delay. It doesn't have to be very long. It might be on the order of 5 minutes. And the nice thing is that if someone is suggesting an invalid state transition function with correct proofs, and there's a 5-minute delay, well, 5 minutes is like 5 times 5 slots, so it's like 25 slots. And so more likely than not, you can have an automated system basically which goes ahead and presses the big red button, and then you need a mechanism to go reboot the chain, I guess. Sorry, does that answer your question? Can you actually repeat the question?
Yeah, to a certain degree. So my question was whether multi-provers are the first step in a path towards a rollup that doesn't have instant upgradability in the validating bridge.
Right. To not having instant upgradability with the multisig. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's say that we want to remove the multisig, then we want to remove the possibility the possibility of having these invalid state transitions go on chain. And yes, I think like I would be most comfortable with something like three verifiers that are written, with different languages, different teams, and things like that. I mean, part of the scary thing actually is not just the technical risk that comes with the verifiers, but it's also the social risk. I think it's very easy to obfuscate a bug if you're a malicious developer in one of these teams writing a verifier. So that's also something to be taken into account. And so, what is the cost of infiltrating a team? Maybe it's not that high. Maybe it's $100 million, let's say. And if you can gain, $10 billion from doing that, it's really, really scary. I think another tool that can help in addition to multi-proving is formal verification. Still very, very early days, but maybe AI can help in some way in like automating a lot of the grunt work that comes with formal verification.
Hopefully not a ChatGPT audit though, because I've heard that there were a couple of teams that have boasted that they audited their smart contracts in ChatGPT.
How did that go for them?
Don't know. I haven't followed up on it, but it was just funny.
I mean, one of the interesting things is that, and actually yesterday I was on Bankless recording an episode, is that eventually we're going to want like real-time settlement so that we can have synchronous composability with all the other rollups, right? The rollups being individual silos today is kind of a temporary thing. But one of the very scary things of synchronous composability and real-time settlement is that you're just not allowed any room for error, because you don't even have this 5-minute window to press the big red button. Like all the funds can just go from one slot to another. And so I think we need a combination of Lindy, of multi-provers, and formal verification.
I would actually say that another thing that could work quite well here in the combination with formal verification and multi-provers is having multiple implementations of the validating bridge. So essentially having a bridge implemented in Solidity and another bridge implementation in like Huff or something else, and then just ensuring running them in the same setting as a multi-prover, where you essentially only mutate the state if both of them agree on the same state mutation. And I think those three might be the path. Like if you combine formal verification, multi-provers, and two implementations or two or more implementations of the validating bridge, we might actually have a chance to avoid needing instant upgradability.
Right. That's a great point. Like the bugs could not be in the snarks themselves, but they could be at the Solidity level or whatnot. And there's compiler bugs all the time, right? Like compiling Solidity is very complicated. Compiling Viper or whatever it is very complicated. And just as a small kind of historical story, like when we had the deposit contract, it was initially written in Viper, and we had it's a very simple contract, and we had the bytecode formally verified, and the formal verification process found multiple bugs in the Viper compiler. So yes, like we do need to be mindful of compiler bugs. Like the nice thing is that like the smart contract layer and the verifiers are meant to be simple, right? You don't actually need to formally verify the provers, only the verifiers, and that's in some sense easier. I mean, I guess a lot of the complexity is in the circuit, right? So all the complexity of the circuit is condensed in this one verification key, and this is where it becomes hairy.
Yeah, I think one of the advantages that circuits have is that unlike smart contracts, there are fewer people who can understand them, and therefore there are fewer people in the world who can actually exploit them. Whereas with smart contracts, we have almost a 10-year history of smart contract exploits, so there are a lot more people who are actually capable of exploiting them.
Right, that's a good point. I mean, on the AI point that you made, I do imagine that there will be a moment, a tipping point, where AI is just so much better than humans at fighting bugs, and then the question becomes: is the team that has this capability a black hat team or a white hat team? And if it is a black hat team, then we might be for a small period of time in a bad position. And like one of the things that we've observed historically is that even simpler protocols than zkVMs, things like bridges, which intuitively speaking should be at least an order of magnitude simpler, if not 2 orders of magnitude simpler, they still have tons of bugs. So maybe we need to wait for AI to develop a little bit before we can really remove all the guardrails.
I guess we would have to help develop, improve AI ourselves, because if we just leave it to the black hats, then we might be in a situation, as you mentioned, where they front run us, and it's not pretty if that actually happens.
Right. So I guess you could just wait for it to be commoditized a little bit. So it's public knowledge that these technologies are available, and they found all the bugs in the scroll circuit.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think we're out of time, so I would like to thank everyone for listening. Justin, thanks for coming. Deli and Chua, thank you for coming. And thanks to the rest of the Scroll team for coming along. So I wish you all a great day, and hopefully we get to hang out more in one of these Twitter spaces in the future again.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.